Well, here we go. I'm going to be talking about the last 30 years of my life, or a 30-year period of my life, and starting in 1984. And that was when I decided I was going to be a world famous rock guitarist. By 1988, I'd played several gigs with different incarnations of my band, Wraith. If you think of Spinal Tap, if you're old enough to remember Spinal Tap, you'll get the gist. We reached the dizzy heights of supporting Stone Cold in Chichester in 1988. Later that year, Jess joined the band as the singer, but she could never be heard because we were all so loud. Jess and I got together under some rather dubious circumstances, and we actually got engaged 6 weeks later, much to the consternation of our parents. And here is me and my beautiful Jess. We were going to get married in 1989. Something else happened first, unfortunately. On the 11th of June 1989, my fiancée, Jess, and I came out of the Hungry Years nightclub in Brighton. It was a rock nightclub. The guy who was driving had about 5 pints, so we all agreed to sleep over in the car. It was at 2 a.m. I slept on the back seat. Jess was in the boot. It was an estate car. Our friend Jane was in the front seat, and the driver woke up a couple of hours later. He felt okay, so he set off. Unfortunately, he fell asleep, lost control, and he hit a curb at about 15 miles an hour, and that was the state of the car afterwards. Basically, I was thrown against the seat. I punctured my lung. I banged my head quite severely. In fact, I was on life support. They filled in my death certificate because they were kind of waiting for me to die because I'd stopped breathing. Jess was thrown out of the back. She was asleep across the back in the boot because it was a state car, as you can see. And she hit the road and she got quite severely banged up and she broke her back. She's been paralysed from the waist down ever since, which was pretty grim. When things like this happen, you don't really know what you're going to do about it because nothing can prepare you for it. I said I nearly died. We both nearly died, and actually our lives were saved by a taxi driver who happened to come along at that, maybe a few minutes later. This was at 4 o'clock in the morning, and this was before the advent of mobile phones. He rang through, and the ambulance came through, and that basically saved our lives. And interestingly, quick note about 4N, I actually met somebody whose dad was around that night, and he told her all about it because it was a thing to don't ever get involved in drinking and driving. And actually, it was kind of a lovely connection with 4N, and that was 20 years later. Okay, so there we are. We actually had to put the wedding back a year, like I said. And yeah, July 1990, I still had some hair then. In fact, I had quite a lot of hair because I was going to be a world famous rock guitarist, as you know. Obviously, the accident had kind of changed things, and what we then had to do is kind of reevaluate what we're going to do. Now, you're probably looking at those pictures thinking, what would I do in that situation? To be honest, nobody knows. We didn't know. We just basically carried on living our lives. Because of the damage to my back, it wasn't possible for me to carry on with my desk job, which was working with computers. And obviously, music was still my passion, so we decided to go back and maybe study music and maybe write music for TV and film. So I went to Chichester University and I studied music, did a BA in related arts, and it was fantastic. I discovered all kinds of music that I'd never written before, some jazz, some avant-garde, some classical music, and it was extremely challenging, but it was also a lot of fun. The related art side was brilliant. You stand in a sunken garden pretending to be an oil slick and stuff. I mean, it's obviously a lot more than that, but it was great. And basically, I was stretched creatively. During that time, I decided I was going to be a famous composer for TV and film. So I left and decided that's what I was going to do. And so that's what I did over the next 7 years. I actually didn't know anybody. I was down in Chichester. Everything was focused in London. I basically created a CD of my music. I sent it out to everybody. And I got a chance to write music for a film called The Way the Buying Stops. That was after about a year of sending stuff out. It was a freebie. It was for a charity. It ended up going worldwide, and it's been seen by about 1 billion people. And it's all part about the saving endangered animals that are used in the endangered animals trade. So that was amazing. And after that, where you can see the kind of gigs that I did. It all looks extremely glamorous, but to be honest, it may be a year and a half between gigs. Ended up working for Disney. That was amazing. It was the first UK series that Disney had ever done, and I happened to make the right call on the right day. So it was called Spooky Sisters, and it won awards, and we all thought it was a pilot. They do 12 episodes, and what happens in animation, they do a pilot. If it works, they then go and commission 300 episodes. So we all sat back waiting for the 300 episodes that was going to be commissioned, and guess who borrowed a shed load of money to turn his garage into a writing studio? And then Disney didn't go with it, and that's fine. And I thought, that's okay, I've worked for Disney, I've got all these credits, I'm going to be flooded out with work. Unfortunately, that's not the way the world works, and I ended up, that was the last gig I did. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to do something differently. So I did, during this time, I ended up teaching at Norwich College, and I started teaching people what I did, which was writing music for TV and film. And I worked with my lifelong friend Nigel Rippon, who's still up there at Northbrook, and the course actually had people go on to even greater success than me, and I was really pleased, not at all jealous. It was great, and I think Nigel's still there at Northbrook College. So I did that. I fixed computers and basically tried to find a way of making some money because I wasn't getting the work. And then one day, Jess, who, by the way, during all of this time, had become an international award-winning digital artist, but again, she wasn't making any money at times from doing it. So what we thought is, I know, let's start a web design company, because she basically picked up a lot of skills about working with the internet. And I had a lot of computer skills, but no design skills. So we decided to set up a company. So we had no money. In fact, we had a load of debt, and we just started doing it. And Access by Design came about because we realized that in terms of accessibility, although the world was an accessible place, which is what we all expect to see because the Disability Discrimination Act had been around since 1997, in 2007, websites, the idea of accessibility just didn't exist. So we wanted to prove to the world that you can be accessible whilst have a strongly designed website. So there we go. And I thought, well, okay, this is fine. And the business began to grow and grow. But I didn't go to business school. I didn't really have a clue about how to run a business. And this bit is all about this book I'm going to write one day about how not to do it. In 2011, that was the year that this new thing came out called responsive design. That was the idea about a website that would work for mobiles and tablets and desktops, and it would all be in one. Now, we'd been doing accessible websites because that's in the name. So we combined them together to make this thing called responsive accessible design. And we thought we were going to be billionaires. So we expanded, and we went to a really nice office and everything else. Unfortunately, I did not understand the idea about how to have a lot of staff and not being able to earn enough money to pay them, because it was just me doing the sales. Unfortunately, Jess's health was starting to dip at this point, and life was becoming incredibly challenging. I was needing about 15k a month to keep the business going. We had a very nice office, which cost a lot of money. We had a lot of staff. They were all fantastic, but it all cost a lot of money. And when you're looking to earn 15k a month to keep the business going, September we earned about 4. In October we got 35 quid in new business. So the wheels came off, and everybody had to go, apart from my wonderful designer Polly, who I kept, who's been with me for over 10 years now. And we both went back and started working from home. I went back home with my tail between my legs because it was a bit of a shock. I'd only ever known expansion. I'd only ever known growth and how just wildly optimistic about everything. But when the kind of bank calls it in and the landlord calls it in and you've got to go back, you have to deal with it. So I spent the next couple of years in a bit of a haze, just trying to survive. And it was very challenging because you're in the network environment, particularly with face-to-face networking. Everybody's succeeding. Everybody's great. Business is great one time after another. And, we don't talk about anything other than success. And I actually found it quite difficult because we were really struggling. I actually confided with somebody that I did trust, and he immediately told me his own horror story about the challenges that he'd have. And I started opening up to a few more people. And what I discovered is that the longer you've been in business, the more ups and particularly downs you're going to have. That was helpful, and we began to grow and we began to fight back. But the work began to pick up. But because it was a time where people weren't really spending money on websites, or on the bespoke websites that we were doing, we were still struggling to get work. 2015, we actually picked up an award. We picked up an award for being quick off the mark back in 2011 for jumping on this idea of responsive web design, which we did unbelievably quickly. And that's me with my daughter Winter there, who worked for me that year. And it was brilliant to have an award. And I thought, okay, well, we're now award winning. We're going to be flooded out with work. Again, the reality is that people weren't spending money on websites. They weren't spending on money with us on websites. We thought, well, maybe there's a way to do it cheaper. And in 2016, that's what we did. We took one of our bespoke websites and turned it into a lower cost version. We called it Run Your Own Website. And it's eventually become our biggest selling product. I thought, fantastic. We've got to the point where we've got an amazing product. It's at the right price, and we are just going to have phenomenal success from now on. Problem was, I wasn't looking after my health. I've got a condition called bronchiectasis. Now, that basically means that I'm not able to clear my lungs properly. And I was continually getting chest infections. I ended up contracting a superbug called Pseudomonas, which is actually incredibly difficult to get rid of. I was under the care of the wonderful Dr. Tate at St. Richard's Hospital. He'd advised me to come in and have some treatment because I was having antibiotics at home. I was having them on a nebulizer. I was waking up early to fit it in. I was getting up at 5, working right through, going to bed at midnight, then doing some more nebulized antibiotics. I was literally running myself into the ground. He said, look, you need to come into hospital for 2 weeks, have the drugs intravenous. Yes, I can't do that. I haven't got the time. Got to keep the business going. And then one day I was in so much pain. Easter 2016, I could barely breathe. And my son had to call an ambulance. I ended up in hospital with pneumonia. And I ended up there for 2.5 weeks. And during that time, they put me on the intravenous antibiotics and they got the Pseudomonas sorted out. So I need to show you this. This is called an Acapella Choice. This is what keeps me active and has kept me free of chest infections ever since. It's completely incredible. And I've actually got it here. Inside it, it's got a little flange, and basically you breathe, this thing vibrates. What it does, it sends this sonic waves down into your lungs. It clears stuff off your lungs and it allows you to cough it up. In actual fact, you cough it up in one of these lovely sample pots. And I was doing that 2-3 times a day. I've been doing that ever since. And guess what? I've not had a chest infection. I've not needed antibiotics, and I've been able to live a full and active life. And that's because of this thing called an Acapella. So if you know anybody who's got bronchiectasis, cystic fibrosis, or any kind of lung issues, speak to your doctor, get a referral, or talk to me afterwards. I can give you some stuff about it because it's an absolutely amazing life-saving device. So the next few years, rebuilding my health I was starting to take control of my health. We were starting to rebuild the business. Been part of 4N for 6 years, and I've found it utterly brilliant in terms of the support that I've had from everybody there, everybody who's known the challenges that I've had. They got alongside me, and they've kept me going. And I'm utterly grateful for all the people and all the friends that I've known during this time. They've been amazing. So what does the future look like? Well, the future looks like, hopefully, I've learned a few lessons. I've learned how not to do things. Hopefully I've learned how to do things a little bit better. I tend to make mistakes 3 times, and eventually after I've done it 3 times, I tend to learn how to do it properly. Hopefully I've got a product that works. Hopefully the next few years will be a little bit stronger. So I want to leave you with this. Back in 2016, I'd just come out of hospital. I was put on this amazing pulmonary rehabilitation course, which is by the physios at St. Richard's Hospital. And this course taught me how to use the Acapella, taught me about my lung condition and how to manage it. And the guys there were utterly brilliant. Came to the end of the course, they felt I hadn't got the message, maybe do the whole course again. By the time I'd finished, my fitness had literally doubled. 6 weeks after that, this is a shot of me and my son Jude circled there, up at Download, up in Donington. It's a heavy metal festival. That weekend, there was us at the front, 80,000 people there. 14 hours without a toilet break both days, but seeing bands like Sabbath and Maiden and old bands that I've grown up with, and then newer rock bands like 6am and Shinedown and whatever. It was an incredible weekend, and It was an experience I'll never forget, and that was literally just a few weeks after coming out of hospital. And I wanted to finish my foresight with that picture because that shows you that hopefully, no matter, you can't control what happens to you, but no matter what does happen to you, you have got a choice in how you respond to it. Thank you very much indeed. And that is my foresight.